Hey, what's going on? It's Will with Neff Family Financial. Being in final expense for 10 years, the bulk of my career was as a field agent. One of the things we talked about a lot was conversion rate, the amount of deals that you close versus the amount of leads that you take. I just wanted to know 100%, like across the board, what was what with each type. Okay, so breaking it down by lead type, web leads has a 10% conversion rate for field agents and 6% for telesales. This is an average. Some of these numbers I'm not buying it. It's breaking down between field and telesales conversion. Web leads, 10% field, 6% telesales. TV commercial leads, field agent 15%, telesales 13%. Direct mail 27% in the field and 15% telesales. Live transfer inbound calls 27% and 22%. Aged leads are 3%. And I don't know what it means aged. I don't know if it's 90 days, 6 months, a year, what they're considering aged leads, but aged leads 3%, which we know those are low. The aged leads, you've seen any of my videos, but aged leads was a big problem, because the aged leads, once it gets to a certain age, it doesn't matter what type of lead it is. It doesn't matter where it's coming from. Aged leads are just aged leads. They're old leads. The people in charge of ordering the leads, doing the mail drops, deciding where to run their web leads. But the aged leads was a huge deal. That's why I make fun of push weeks so bad, because aged leads 3%. This is an average. So I would get a call. Hey, Will, we're doing a push in Cincy, man. Oh, awesome! I can't wait. Yeah, see if your people are on board. Oh, they're going to love it. It's so much. Everybody gets to go to dinner together. Cousin's going to buy dinner. Nice. Okay, so if direct mail, okay, let's just use that for instance. An agency like that, the bulk of their stuff is through direct mail leads because they're field agents. We have a 9 times higher rate, average closing rate from 3% to 27. Am I doing that math right? I don't know. 3 to 27. Okay, those leads were typically $35, maybe $37, and they'd get $15 off. 27% on a $35 lead. 3% should be like $6 to have the same average, right? And that ratio sucks. You don't want to go somewhere and work on a push for 2 to 3 days on a 20 pack, 3%. I mean, you need 100 leads to sell 3 deals. Whatever, wherever you're working, if you're working aged leads and you're paying more than a couple of dollars a piece, stop, right? I mean, you can go to agedleads.com and buy aged leads based on the time frame that you consider old. I think they're like pennies, and we were pushing those down people's throats for $35. Every once in a while, be a $5, $10 discount. The issue with that scenario is the director was going to eat those leads if they sat there. Eat them and send them to your best people, because your best people are going to get better than 3%. Why? If I'm paying for the leads as the manager, if I'm sitting on $400 or 400 leads in an area that are aged, pick your top 5 agents and give them all of them. You're going to make more money than trying to convince 25 to 30 people who want nothing to do with going to that area. They don't work there for a reason. Getting a 10% discount, but taking a 90% hit on your conversion, no. I mean, where I think these numbers are skewed, there's still some variation there. Anybody that's been doing this long enough knows if you drop an area or you're pulling web leads in the same area, whatever, long enough, it doesn't take you long to start seeing duplicates, right? So, one of the lies that I told myself it's kind of a lie, but this is what I told myself to justify why I was okay with it. I've worked my inventory several times where I'd go back and run stuff that was a few months old and mix it in with new stuff. And I'd write a deal on somebody that I had a lead card from 6 months or longer, couldn't get a hold of them, whatever, could never get them at the door, just randomly find them on a 6-month-old lead. They're just as excited to see me as they would have been, as most people are that sent this thing in a week or two ago. It's because they sent another lead in, right? So you get the advantage of that new lead that somebody ultimately ends up buying, and you're writing them on something that you've had from 6 months ago. You know, it is what it is. But overall, aged leads, based on the data, the research, 3%. Contact rate on webs, field agent, 35 to 50%. I hate, it's 42.5%. Right? Can we just all agree? It's 42.5%. Why, if you're giving me an average, why give me a range? And telesales is 55. Contact rates on direct mail for field is 65%. Telesales is 70. Appointments set in the field only. So door knocking appointment sets, 50 to 65%. So 57.5%. Sit rate from appointments, 70 to 85. So 77.5%. 78% is your sit rate from appointments. So if you're a field sales, this is why they beat appointments so hard. Whether you're calling to set them, door knocking to set them, whatever you're doing. When you have an appointment, somebody's expecting you to be there. 78% closing ratio, or sit rate from appointments, I guess. So even a new agent's going to close 30%. Somebody that's terrible at this, stumbles over everything, can't remember anything. They're going to find enough people from that sit that want the product, regardless of how good that person is. Average cost per issued policy acquisition. I don't agree with this either. It says a web lead, the average cost per client is between $400 to $900. So I go back, web lead, let's just say an average of 10%. If you're paying $20, that's a lot. TV leads is $300 to $700. I don't even buy that. The biggest thing I was looking at was the conversion rate. Right, that's what you're going to pay attention to. So this is industry average. So that takes into consideration somebody on Glassdoor complaining about the company they were at, or any other job or insurance forum. They didn't do this, they didn't do that. Did you get in your car and go to work after they released you? Did you pick up the phone and call? Probably not. The biggest reason people fail in this business is they just don't get started. But I'm not buying this. I mean, I know when web leads really first started, our web leads anyway, where I was at, started getting better from just a generic page to where they were actually pushing it on social media and YouTube. I would take 10 leads at a time to try to get a core closing ratio so that I could basically repeat that to my agents so they knew what they were dealing with, especially when something's new. If you've got an agent that's been trained on mailers, they shouldn't be freaked out about web leads. It's just a different piece of paper. These are still people looking for the same thing, but they get freaked out, mostly because they read something, they watched a video of somebody complaining, or they heard somebody else in the agency complaining about how they don't like a lead, this type of lead, or when the leads look like that, and then they did a presentation and didn't close, and they're like, yep, those leads suck. It's not true. Everybody, all these people, regardless of how they got in your hands, were interested in this product at one point. It's just luck of the draw. Did you get to them in time before all that fizzled out, right? But web leads at 10%, there's going to be a lot of people they're polling that are just not working them. Unless they're getting them, again, like well after, 10 days or so. I mean, one of the things we saw was like the average closing ratio on even a bad web lead was like 35%, and that was within 72 hours, right? We're able to get access to our web leads in real time. I can be a field agent looking on my app and see the leads that are popping up. Something hits in my area, or within driving distance of where I'm at, I can grab that. It showed up 5 minutes ago. the house is 20 minutes from me. I can be at their door if I don't want to call them within 25 minutes of them hitting send on or submitting whatever information they want. And I saw something not too long ago. It was like, if you are able to get in touch with these people within 5 minutes, like from 5 minutes from start to 5 minutes after, like the ratio drops by like 600%. So that was a huge deal for me making the leap and going to Senior Life, was having the ability to have access to leads that were real time, that my agents could contact in real time. Now, granted, there's third-party lead companies out there that people can deal with. Some companies you got to be really careful. Lincoln will terminate your contract if they find out you're doing it. I know agents did it, but the purpose of being at a company like that or coming to Senior Life is that they are sending out branded information. If I get a mailer, it's Senior Life branded. The web leads are Senior Life branded. The commercial, the live transfers, they know they're calling a Senior Life agent, period. So I don't have to deal with any of that. I don't have to, pray that the marketing company I'm dealing with sent out 500 mailers in whatever zip code, and then 20 minutes later somebody ordered the same exact batch. We all run into that anyway. But if I knew that I could eliminate it, when I'm knocking on a door, if I'm calling somebody saying, hey, this is Will with Senior Life, blah, 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 I got the mailer, you were online, what have you. For the most part, they know who I am, where I'm from, I just thought the conversion ratios were interesting. The 3% on the aged leads, like that's, I can't beat that horse enough. You know what I mean? If you're stuck in a world where that's common practice for you, where you know that there's not enough people working in certain areas or whatever the case might be, if you're constantly running leads that are 5, 6, 7, 8 months old, make sure you're not paying north of $10 for those leads. And honestly, if that's all you have access to, I get it. Some of those companies, they're financing your leads, but I can tell you all day how great it is to not pay interest. If the company's financing your leads where you're paying it back out of your advances, but if I'm paying full boat for leads that are 6 months old, that's interest, no matter how you slice it, right? Because that same data, I could buy the information from multiple lead sources. The biggest one, Aged Leads website. You may as well just figure out a way. Even if you're brand new, can barely scrape $1 or $2, pull $100 out of 2 or 3 sales or advances, and log on and buy you a couple hundred of those things. If you're buying 1,000 leads and closing 3% in a month, that's still 30 deals. But doing it at full boat or even $25 for a 6-month-old lead is nonsense. And then this was average activity per sale, 8 to 15 door knocks. Between door knocks or preset appointments, 8 to 15. The average is 12 to 20 houses. That's 1 to 3 sales. That's for field agents. Telesales outbound, meaning you're just calling whatever leads you get, 80 to 150 dials per day, 100 to 200 calls equals 1 to 3 sales. And then live transfers. Yeah, they're expensive, but you're buying your time back, right? So if I'm buying fresh web leads, let's say for $20, 80 leads, 16, right? 80 times 20, 1,600. Yeah, $1,600, 3,000 if I'm at between 80 to 150. To average, I don't know. The calls I get, the calls I'm on board with, 100 to 200 calls to average a sale a day. But the live transfer, the inbound, 5 to 15, right? So just look at the numbers. The live transfer is 70, 80 bucks, $100 in some cases. I'm spending $500 a day to average 3 to 4 sales. Your average commission is probably $500, $600. I mean, that's nuts. There's a huge advantage. The only thing I didn't like was the persistency. Persistency drops. It's not terrible. It's like 85% for door knock for field agents, and 78% for telesales, inbound, outbound, whatever. Because you're going to lose some of that relationship. Some of these people are going to stick with you because of you. It's hard for them to know you over the phone versus meeting you in person, you being at the house. But yeah, so experienced killers can do 4 to 6 houses per sale. Okay, I see where it's going with this. Average agent's about 10 door knocks or houses per deal written. I think last time I really nailed down on this, it was somewhere, I knew that if I saw 3 people, which isn't necessarily 3 door knocks, but if I saw 3 live bodies, I was going to write a deal for every 3rd person that I seen. And there's days you might knock 10 houses in a row with nobody home, leave a sticker, do whatever you do. Bad agent, 20 plus. So if you're looking to get in this industry, if you're new to the industry, you can't get a straight answer, you're just trying to figure out what's what, okay? If you're working with somebody that tracks numbers, you should have a pretty good idea, regardless if you're field or if they are mostly field, and they should have a pretty good idea of at least half, right? Not every agency does both, but you're roughly, okay, so for telesales outbound, for a newer agent, about 120 calls per sale. Industry midpoint, 75 calls per sale. Door knock agents, I think almost everybody I talk to, it's, they're working 20 minimum fresh leads a week. You're trying to, your goal is to sell as many as possible in a day. On a good day, you run into enough people, you're not going to knock all 20 of those doors, but you should be able to get through all 20 of those leads in 2 to 3 days. At least hit that door one time, depending on how wide the net is, the area that you're working. And then backfill in with some other stuff you've got from that area, so that you always at minimum have 20 houses to go see on a daily basis. But if your goal is 20, you're probably going to average 12 to 15 houses. You should see 6 people, right? 2 minimum. If you're not, figure out what's broken. The leads aren't necessarily broken, okay? All these numbers are way over on the estimates if you know that you're working aged stuff, okay? But if your stuff's fresh and you're not hitting these numbers, something's broken, right? Get with somebody, work on your script, work on your presentation, and check yourself, right? Like before you wreck yourself. Yeah. Are you getting in the house and not selling because you can't get in the door? You can't, so work on your door approach. If you're getting in the house, you're doing a bunch of presentations. If you're one of my agents and you're calling me up or showing me your daily activity sheet and you got 3 appointments a day or 3 sits a day and you're closing 1 deal every 2 or 3 days, your presentation is trash. We gotta fix that quick. Same thing with your door approach. If you're doing no presentations, you just can't get in, you're talking too much at the door. Get with somebody, tighten that up. A lot of times it just takes a couple quick fixes, tighten this up, don't say that. You're not a door-to-door salesman. You're not out here trying to convince these people that their grass looks terrible. You're not selling them lawn care, something they didn't ask for. You're not selling them, termite inspections or bug killers, whatever these guys are, or solar panels. You are going to the house. They sent that form in. They lived there when they mailed it in. Their mail comes there. At some point, they will be back home. Okay, there's a little bit of luck that goes into this as far as catching them at a good time. and knowing when they're bullshitting you at the door and whether or not that's a good time or not. You know, if they're in their pajamas and they got a little pastrami on their chin and they're telling you they're busy, you know, they're watching whatever daytime television shows are popular now. You know, it's like, they don't want to miss their stories, you know, whatever. But you don't have to give them, like, I love listening to these people when they come to my door to spray for bugs or to sell me lawn care or whatever the group is. Like the Facebook page, it lights up, you know, in the neighborhood when these people are out and about. Everybody's so worried. Oh my God, they're coming. Oh my, like, listen, Karen, just don't buy it if you don't want it. If you've got a problem and they're already here, flag them down, make their day, you know, tell them you need them really, really bad. You were just getting ready to do that, you know, but I like to let them go through it. You know, they spend so much time telling me how they did this for their neighbors and so down the street and blah, 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 blah. Nobody cares. And the bad part is salespeople are the easiest people to close. We just want what you just give me the price. Tell me what you're going to do to make my life easier. And it's either worth it right then and there or it's not. Like, if you can't close a salesman, you need sales training. So what got me looking into this was the amount of people who I talk to, recruits, that seen a video somewhere, watched something, seen something, some influencer on TikTok sold something over the phone somewhere, you know, and they thought, today's the day I jump in, I get my license, and I'm gonna call everybody, and which is fine, but you know, they saw something. Today's the day that they're going to be a telesales agent. You know, people like with no knowledge or background of this industry, and that's fine. You can come in and go 100% into telesales. It is harder. I don't care who you are. You know, I read something a couple of weeks ago about it, and it was literally saying how in the first couple of weeks, just be ready to only write 1 or 2 deals. I wouldn't have made it. Okay, I was trained. I rode with the training manager when I started in this industry. I was supposed to have 2 full days of training. I rode with my manager for 1 day. He took 10 leads and scattered over 3 counties. The last lead, he wrote 2 deals. And what surprised me was I came from an industry where I was on the phones all day, and I'm not opposed to the phones, but at that time I was just burnt out. A few years prior, I was in like an actual call center making outbound phone calls all day long. And he told me, thinking back as a training manager, we're telling you to make calls, call these people, schedule appointments, but we had known each other for a long time. I'm like, do you make any calls? He said no. He had no appointment set up. Printed those 10 leads off, met me, I rode with him. He wrote 2 deals and set 2 appointments from the other ones while I was there to come back in a day or 2. That's all I needed to know. He had me do a ride along the next day with one of his agents. If you have an agent that you're putting with somebody and you're really good at this, it doesn't matter how knowledgeable they are about the product, don't have somebody train your new people or do ride-alongs with your new people that are constantly in your bottom barrel as far as producers. I've never been in any type of sales job ever where I wanted to jump in and save the person that was training me. And in my mind, the first time it happened, I'm like, you're new. There's no, like, don't do this. Like, don't say anything. Shut up. She's going to close it. She's thinking exactly what you're thinking of. She wasn't. Didn't close anything. Final expense is not a 2 and 3 appointment close. It's not that type of business. I would hate that. I don't care how big the sale is. Like that there's, yeah. Not in final expense. There are parts of this industry where that makes sense. Not in final expense sales. But regardless, I didn't even get my presentation until that night. They emailed it to me. I read over it once or twice. I destroyed it, botched it on the hood of a car at a rest stop the next morning. They handed me my 20 leads and said, call me if you need anything. Don't get me wrong, they were available anytime I called them. It wasn't like 100% thrown to the wolves, but I was a little bit. Again, he knew me from a previous career, and I think he had more faith in me than I did myself. But I knocked the first door, guy let me in, presented, wrote me a check. This was before we did anything electronically, mailed it in on Wednesday, they got it on Thursday, I was paid on Friday. And that was all I needed to know about this business, okay? So as terrible as I was, I knew it. I would have not made it if I knew that I had to buy 50 to 100 leads a week for 2 to 3 weeks before I started averaging 1 app a day. I wouldn't have survived. It had nothing to do with the gas money to get out, because I needed that check on Friday to keep going to work. But what shocks new agents in the field: less volume, more emotional exhaustion, much higher close percentages, much lower rejection volume. I don't know why I would be shocked for lower rejection. If they're new, how do they know what to expect? And then in telesales, it's an insane rejection volume, obviously. Faster cycles, obviously less travel, requires emotional detachment fast. Yes. Think about all the stuff you say to and about people that call you. And then you're going to get into a job where you think, I'm going to do this. I'm going to become one of the people that I can't stand, right? Because every client that I talk to that does something, sends something in online, even asks us to call them. Anybody that's in the industry that's watching this, you know what I'm talking about. How many times have you sat with a client while you're writing a policy, and every phone call they get that's not their kids or their neighbor is spam? Not everything is junk. You're playing on your phone all day, Karen. Momo is, she's in her nightie until 2 p.m. bundled up on her recliner, playing video games and eating whatever on her cell phone, and clicks and applies for everything she gets an alert for. But then when they call her, they're trying to scam me. No, they're not. They're trying to sell you whatever that last thing was you clicked on. So yeah, you've got to be emotionally detached, because you're going to get, they're going to beat you up. If you can deal with that, go telesales. If you like to drive, go in the field and work anywhere. Honestly, I don't know about every state. I know in Ohio and Indiana for sure. Wherever you're at, talk to whoever's responsible for putting leads in your hands. Find the closest rural area to you. If it's an hour and a half away, just make that part of your day and beat that up. Get used to that 3-hour round trip every day. But the rural communities are honeypots, because they don't get worn out as much. And when you lump them in with people in the big city markets, they answer just as often. So it takes just as much as work to get a hold of somebody in Podunkville, Ohio on the phone as it does in Cincinnati, Columbus, or Cleveland. But I can knock on the doors of these people out in the middle of nowhere, and the bulk of the time they're home. They ain't got a whole lot going on. You're going to catch them. You're going to write something, So yeah, that's all, right? The field agents, 12 to 20 houses a day. You're looking to sit with 6 people minimum to write 1 to 3 apps. And figure minimum 100 calls a day on telesales. And you got to commit to that, And I had a lady working for me about a year ago. She's like, I got nothing but time. Will, my grandkids are in school. I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. And we set her up on a plan, and she was I gave her a bunch of inventory I had just taken. I had a bunch of Columbus leads that didn't work. She wanted to do 100% telesales. She had, it's a long story, but basically it was gonna be a minute before she could drive. And she knew that telesales was her golden opportunity. We worked, got her some stuff, got her scripting, went over everything. After she got the leads, took her 3 or 4 days to finally muster up and pull the trigger and make the call. She's looking at the app every day, watching the live transfers come in. I'm like, snag them, hit them, go for it. Worst, if you can get 1 or 2 of those a day on top of the other leads, or 3 or 4 of those a day, you probably don't really need to work anything else, to be successful. But she would talk herself out of it. By the time she would swipe on it, it's, every agent that's making calls at that moment when that call pops up, it's not available 60 seconds later, and she's trying to role play scenarios in her head. But when I would talk to her about her call times, I called all 20 of those between 10 and 2. What the hell are you doing for 4 hours? That you can only call 20. You didn't have one conversation, took you 4 hours to dial 20 numbers. That's it. Like, it's an app between manually typing the phone number, it ringing 3 or 4 times, and going all the way through to voicemail and leaving a voicemail. You're 3 minutes tops, per call. That's an hour if you don't take a breath. You don't get up, you don't do nothing, you don't stretch, you just dial. You should be able to call all of them, leave them a voicemail in an hour or less. And you got to do that 5, 6, 7 times a day, all day long. You'll be successful. And just because you didn't get a hold of those leads today doesn't mean they're terrible. One of the first people I ever talked to 5, 6 years ago that really blew up in telesales, he'd been a field agent for 4 years. When he started doing telesales, the state he lived in, he was tied up because of COVID, couldn't go out, couldn't go anywhere. So he just started making calls. And he said the same thing all of us had been pointing to was 100 calls or more a day. But he had, one of the things he stated that helped him be successful, he was taking 20 to 30 leads a week, new, spending an average of, let's just say $35 a lead, right? So $700 to $1,000, $1,100, so between $700 and $1,100 a week in new leads. He was writing somewhere around $40,000 a month in production average at the time. And I think the number was roughly 45 to 50 apps. And he said about 15 apps a month were coming from those new leads from that month. The rest of them, the other 35, were coming from any lead that was 30 days old or older that he'd already been working, plus his 4 years worth of inventory. So 20 leads a week in inventory, plus his chargebacks, cancellations, whatever, calling people that have been off the books for over a year to sell them as new business, and reaching out to his current book to see anybody that needed anything, a referral, wanted to write somebody else in the family, needed to increase their coverage, whatever. And he said he was pretty much calling from 9 to 9, Monday through Saturday, took Sundays off, but in some cases I think he was doing, the people that after talking to him a few times, that was the only time, that was the only day, so he'd have appointments only on Saturday or Sundays. And after a couple of months, even started going out in the field maybe 1 or 2 Saturdays a month to catch those people. Once he got a cluster, like, again, I'm in Ohio, I'm right outside of Columbus. So let's say over the course of 90 days, I've got 15 leads, no matter what phone number I charge or try in Columbus. They're disconnected, can't get a voicemail, can't get a hold of them, so then he's going to take one day that month and hit and door knock those 15 people, but yeah, this was a tenured agent who made the change. And when everybody started going back in the field, he just got really good on the phones and did that. It just changed his career then, but we also didn't have access to live transfers or really even our web leads. We didn't have access to them right away. Here it's real time. I can get web leads as they show up. The world I came from, I knew they were there. If say Franklin County had 30 leads in it yesterday, and I wake up today and there's 70, I know 40 of those leads came in overnight. Awesome, give me 20. They can adjust them based on date received. No, you just got the 20 oldest. So the 40 that came in last night, unless enough people took them, they're now getting older. Sorry, that's not the point. Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk on, was the conversion ratio. I just thought it was interesting. I've always been I knew what we did. I was just curious on the industry. What are your thoughts? Anybody that's been doing this, what are you getting? Whether you're doing telesales, whether you're doing, you're a field agent, are you tracking your numbers? Do you have real numbers? And are these numbers off? Like, I'd be curious. I'd love to talk to somebody that is just likes to do weird stuff and went a period of time and worked age leads on purpose just to see if they could somehow scrape 15 or 20% out of there instead of the 3, maybe 5 or 6 if you were a really good closer. I'd love to talk to somebody that went totally against the grain and spent a quarter a piece on 10,000 leads or some nonsense and wrote, I don't know, made a bunch of money off of it. I don't know, stuff like that just gets me excited. So yeah.